And as Susan comes forward to give us our reading, I want to suggest something to us. I would like us to use our imaginations, to move from this building today, on this hot, lovely day, and take ourselves into the scene that's going to unfold. Maybe you'd like to be one of the disciples. Maybe you'd like to be one of the townspeople. Feel the heat. Feel the dust under your feet. Look at those big boulders, the stray bit of tree. Hear the soft lapping of the lake. And especially for Nigel, hear the grunting of the pigs. You'll know what I mean. Watch the scene unfold. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Susan, thank you. And then Allan will come and talk to us.
Our reading today is Mark chapter 5. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus didn't let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. This is the word of the Lord.
Let me ask you a question. Who's the saddest, most desperate person you know of and you've ever met? I did think this week of Gareth Southgate in the England team, but that's my only reference to football this morning. No, more seriously, who comes to mind when you think about it? I mean, as I thought of those, I don't know if you drive up the Bristol Road where it crosses Belgrave Middleway at the traffic lights. When you park there and waiting for the lights to change, these people come, desperate people, banging on your window, trying to take money from you. I was quite challenged the other day because one of them knocked on this door of this woman's car and she wound the window down and gave him £5. I was challenged and quite taken aback by that. They're desperate people, aren't they, to have to do that? There are many desperate, sad, ill, needy people in our world today. We are so fortunate as we sit here like this. And today, in the Gospel, in Mark chapter 5, we meet, I think, maybe the most desperate man in the Gospels. You can debate that afterwards, but certainly one of the most desperate, sad people you could ever come across. And Kathy got you to try and imagine the scene. Let's try and imagine this man. Let's try and picture him. It says he's possessed by many demons, Satan's followers, fallen angels, if you like, and they are in control of his body, of his voice, of his mind. I don't really understand what that's about, really, to be honest, but it's there, isn't it? That's what they've managed to do. He lives among the tombs. He lives in a graveyard. If you know a graveyard, that's where this man lives. How terrifying for him, particularly in the dark. Scary, aren't they, in the daytime, but in the nighttime. This story is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And in Luke tells us he was naked and they had never lived in a house. He had received some treatment, which was to isolate him and chain him hand and foot. It hadn't worked. In fact, it had made it worse, it appears, and allowed more demons to flourish in his life. And it says, all night and day he cried out and cut himself. How sad and pathetic, how awful for this man. And then Jesus arrives by boat from across the lake. Those of us who were here last week, John talked about Jesus crossing the lake and the stilling of the storm. So this is straight after that. So the disciples have just had the trauma of this terrible storm, and now they arrive at the other side. My guess is that they were looking forward for a chance to recover from the trauma, maybe sit by the beach a little bit and relax. No chance. As soon as they land, they're met by this dangerous man who comes up to them. There's never a dull moment. But Jesus isn't fazed. And when the man comes to him and the demons speak through the man, Jesus enters into a conversation with the demons. See, the demons might have controlled this poor man, but they recognize a greater authority in Jesus, and they beg him not to torture them. I have some experience of demon possession and exorcism and demons, but not very much. I guess that's probably true of you. So I've asked Chris, with a bit more experience than me, just to come up and say a little bit of advice for us if this is something that we come across. So thank you, Chris, for doing this bit.
Yes, ask the vicar. He's got more experience. Well, not in this case. I have had occasion to be involved in the casting out of evil spirits 2 or 3 times when I've been doing the ministry on Greek islands with my dear late wife. We came across it, but I can tell you about that if you wish at some stage. But just to say, fortunately, we don't come across the sort of dire situation that we're looking at this morning. Often it's much calmer than that, but there are demons around. And just to say that if you suspect that there is someone or a situation where there are demons or something needs attention, something needs casting out, please don't wade in. I'm sure you wouldn't anyway. But the bishop has appointed someone with experience in this area as the leader in deliverance ministry in the diocese. He has a team with him. And the thing to do is, if you suspect something, go and talk to Ben, first port of call. Go and talk to the vicar, mention it to him, who will then pass it on and seek advice from those in the diocese who have a remit for this particular area. And it's for safety's sake as much as anything else. But if you do find yourself in a position, no need to be afraid. What was Jesus' favorite command? Fear not, because he has all authority. And I've found myself 2 or 3 times on these Greek islands having to cast out a demon because it suddenly manifested. And Helen and I were able to do it in the name of Christ and command it to leave. We do have authority in Christ. But fortunately, this will not happen very often. But as I say, if you do suspect something, please, first port of call to Ben, who will then refer to those who have much more experience. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chris. We're not trying to scare you, we're just trying to be real. These things can happen. But what I want to do is just focus on the response of first the demons, then the crowd, and then this man. But before that, a word about the pigs. Okay? I've been in several discussion groups, and some people focus on why did 2,000 pigs have to die? I guess it shows how culture has changed. And people struggle to understand that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but none of the gospel writers tell us why. They all record it, but no one says why. And I looked up different experts, if you like, theologians, and they differ greatly on this one. So if it really is something that bugs you, then I suggest that you research it yourself. But just to note one thing, this mass slaughter is a one-off. And what it does, it gives us a vivid visual aid of this exorcism, how powerful it was, how many demons there were. It drives home the magnitude, if you like, of what Jesus did. And it makes it unforgettable, I think, and makes it very powerful. So let's look at the different responses. First of all, of the demons, legion. I guess they're called legion because there's lots of them. And the thing in the Gospels is that the demons always knew who Jesus was. Here they call him the Son of the Most High God. And they fear him because he has authority over them. What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me. In Mark chapter 1, there's the first exorcism that Jesus did. And again, the demon knew it was Jesus. It's interesting, isn't it? And I just want to say that the Bible is very clear that the devil is a real person. He first appears in Genesis chapter 3, and he's finally defeated in Revelation, the last book of the Bible. And he has this army of demons, it would appear. And he's committed to opposing God and everything that is good, and of tempting and trying to get us to fall. And in my experience, there are two extremes when we think about Satan and the occult and all this kind of thing. One is that we see demons everywhere. Now, those of us who are old enough might remember there was a book in the 1980s, can't remember the name of it, that attributed everything to demons. You had the demon of depression, the demon of anxiety, the demon of anger, the demon of alcohol. Whatever it was, you had the demon. And so the solution was to exorcise the demon. The problem is there's been a lot of damage done to people, particularly with mental illness, with people thinking they're demon-possessed and trying to cast out demons. You might even read about it in the newspapers. So that's one extreme, which I don't think we want to get into. But the other extreme, and I think this is perhaps more common for us, is not to think about him at all, or not to think he actually exists. And I think this is his best strategy at the moment. This seems to be quite a popular and successful strategy that he has. He's got us to believe that he's not actually around and he's not doing very much. I mean, for example, how often do we talk about him? But he is real, and he's looking personally to tempt and to get each one of us to fall, just as he did to Jesus. In Matthew and Luke, we can read of the devil tempting Jesus for 40 days, offering him status, power, and wealth, probably the kind of things that he wants to tempt us to fall for. But I want to say that the devil is at work at every level, in political systems, all the political parties. None of them are perfect, whoever you vote for. Big business, organized crime, national governments, in all the structures of society. He's behind racism, sexism, injustice, war, slavery, oppression, climate change. And he's also, dare I say, in the church. No wonder Jesus told us to pray, and we'll pray it later. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And James and Peter told us to resist the devil. And Paul explains in Ephesians chapter 6 the armor that we've been given to fight against him. We can't fight against him on our own. We need God-given armor. So let's know our enemy and let's be ready for his attacks. So that's the demons. Then the people, the crowd if you like. Let's just reread verses 14 to 16 or 17. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. So what did those who saw this miracle, this amazing exorcism, decide to do? Did they invite Jesus to stay and lead a 7-day campaign and bring all the sick and the demon-possessed people for him to heal? No, they ran away. And then when others came, they were afraid and they said, Jesus, please leg it, please go, please leave, we don't like this, please. And he did. He left. Now, I don't really understand the response of the people. I can understand it a little bit, but I don't fully understand it. They were quite happy to tolerate a deranged man living amongst them and possessed by demons, but they asked Jesus to leave. It's interesting, isn't it? They seem more comfortable with the evil and the way things were than the power that they couldn't control. And I think I've seen several people like that in my experience. You know, people who perhaps got problems, difficulties, they come and they explore the Christian message and they think, this is good, this is good. But in the end, it's just too big a step and they choose to go back. They prefer their own life with all the problems and all the difficulties to risking having Jesus around in their lives. Better the old habits than the risk of change. I'd encourage us to not be like that. Let's follow Jesus even if it gets scary and it's out of control. I wondered too, I kind of checked it out. In all three Gospels, it's chronological. Jesus says, let's go across the lake to Decapolis, this place of 10 towns, 10 cities it means. Let's go. So it's Jesus' plan to go across the lake. They go through the storm, they get there, and then he meets this man. And he heals this man. And then he's told to leave and he goes back. So you think, was that a successful mission trip? All the way across the lake, through that terrible storm, just for this one man. I think it is. I'll try and show a bit later that it was more fruitful than perhaps we realise. And I thought, every individual matters, don't they? What lengths will we go to reach others? Desperate people. So let's look at the healed man. I think it's terrible that everyone calls him the Gerasene demoniac. I wouldn't like to be called by what I used to be like. I want to call him the healed man. I wish the Bible had given him his name. But look at verse 15. It's one of the most, I think, beautiful verses in the Bible. When they came, that's the people, when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. That's wonderful if you can picture that. From where I tried to paint what he was like to where he is. He's a new person. And naturally he wants to go and he wants to go with Jesus. Can I come with you? This is great. I want to be with you. And Jesus says, no. Stay around here and go telling other people what's happened to you, how much the Lord has done for you. And that's what he does. How much did he know? He'd never been to a seminar on evangelism. Probably only met Jesus that moment. Probably didn't really know who Jesus was, actually. But he had an experience of God in his life, and he was able to share that. The application's obvious, isn't it? We too, who have come to know Jesus, have our experience to share. I guess it won't be as incredible as this man. If it is, please tell me afterwards. But there's power in just ordinary people like me and you telling our story. But I don't think the story ends in Mark chapter 5, because the people have told Jesus to leave. I don't know who's preaching on Mark 7, verses 31 to 37, but we have a happier ending, because there Jesus goes back to this area of the Decapolis, And this time, the people respond, it says, with acceptance and amazement. They want to hear him. They encourage him. So maybe this man's storytelling has made a difference, or the story about him has spread. So there's a lot in this story, but just 3 thoughts to leave with you. First of all, let's recognize that the devil is real. But as Chris has told us, in Jesus we have victory. We don't need to fear. Someone sent a text this morning and he said they love this story because Jesus takes someone from a place of death, a graveyard, a cemetery, to a place of life. And that's what Jesus does, isn't it? Hopefully he's done that for you, and he'll do it for people out there. Secondly, let's look and pray for opportunities to share our story, how much the Lord has done for us and how much he's shown us mercy. And our story, I think, has an even happier ending, as it does for this man. I just wanted to finish by reading some verses from Revelation, the last book of the Bible. We don't spend enough time in Revelation. Myself and 3 friends have been studying it. I don't really understand it, but it's exciting. We understand enough. Just some verses from the end of chapter 20 about what happens to Satan, and then some verses about what's going to happen to me and you. Then the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, joining the beast and the false prophet. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. That's what he deserves. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. All these things are gone forever." You know what? We're going to be there. So was this man. I'll find out what his name is then. And I think some of his neighbours from the Decapolis are going to be there as well because he told the story. But hopefully some of our neighbours and friends are going to be there because we've told the story too. So thank you. I'll hand back to Kathy.
So we're going to move into our time of prayer now. I'd just like us to think for a moment or two. You see, in this story that we've had today, whatever you think about the man's situation, I think we would all be able to say that this man was stuck. And without the power and authority of Jesus, he was going to stay stuck. And that made me wonder, do any of us, do any of our friends that we know or our family, are we stuck? Has something in our lives or in those that we care about been going on for a very long time? Nothing we've tried, nothing they've tried has worked. They and us might have given up on trying. And what I would like us to just do, if that resonates with you either personally or on behalf of somebody you care about, is just sit and think about yourself or that person and ask this God, this Jesus who we've just heard about, who healed this terribly, terribly awful situation man, to come into those situations. Ask him to intervene. And could I also suggest, if this has resonated with you, that you consider coming for prayer ministry over in the corner at the end of the service, or to talk to somebody who you trust.